Welcome to Yoga for You, a channel tailored to helping you discover your very own unique yoga practice. Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Sagacity Spotlight. Today's guest is Cathleen Coombs. We dive in a little deep today, and we're going to talk about what it's like to be a mom and a yogi at the same time and how that can provide an outlet. We're going to talk about the beauty of commitment to yoga and the blessings that brings to the lives of many. We're going to talk about some fun things too, like the anatomical understandings of why runners should consider doing yoga. We're going to talk about things like theme, teaching certain classes. All in all, Kathleen has hit the scene hard. She knows what she's doing, and she's learning what she doesn't as she goes. And it's beautiful to witness, and it's beautiful to hear this talk. So I hope you can be in a place to receive this teaching and ultimately just enjoy. Please comment anything below. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe to this video channel because that's how we grow. That's how we reach more people. So thank you so much for those who are here. Hope to see you continuously again and again. So much love. Namaste. Hello, my beautiful friends. Welcome back to another episode of the Sagacity Spotlight. Today, I'm joined with the incredible Cathleen, and she is a local friend, a local yogi I know where I live currently in the mountains of Southern California. And she's got an incredible energy. She's got an incredible story, and we're going to pull her on today and just hear a little bit about how she got to where she is now. So, hello, welcome, Cathleen. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. That was a very warm and kind introduction.
Oh,
I'm good though.
Good. I think you just bring it out, that warm and kindness, I think. So you got a very welcoming persona. So it's great. I reached out to you, a week or so ago, and you were all for it. So thanks for saying yes to the opportunity and coming on to share a little bit about your journey today.
Thank you.
I know we talked a little bit before the interview started, and you've been practicing for quite a long time. What would you say your reason for practicing was initially?
Oh, that's a great question. So when I started practicing, it was when my oldest son was still young. He was like 3 or 4 years old. And as a working parent, trying to find ways to get in all of your exercise is difficult. My mother always practiced yoga when I was growing up. And I will say something about that, in that the things that we do in life, sometimes they can only happen at the time that we're ready for them. And I definitely feel that was that way about yoga for me. It was like when I was a younger woman, when I was really active, really driven, I didn't settle in. I didn't know how to settle in. But then later on, so now we're in my 30s, like 35, I decided to pick it up again. So there were classes up at the gym in Twin Peaks. And to be honest with you, even though my mother did yoga, I didn't really understand what yoga was. And so really, my initial reasoning for doing it was to have a really great form of exercise. I always enjoyed more solitary exercise. I don't like equipment. I can't always go running or walking because of the time of the day or whatever. So that was my reasoning, actually, was for doing it. I just joined a group class and got introduced that way. And then when I was pregnant with my second son, I backed off. What I did not understand then, that I now really can understand, is that yoga is for all of our stages of our living, all of the ways that our body presents itself, all of our abilities at that given moment in time. And we call those things modifications. But I think I had a rigid thought process at the time that was, yoga is supposed to be this one thing. And I talked to you about that earlier, about how it's about that physicality, the great workout, and pushing your body into movements and emulating what you think the perfect pose is or whatever. And so when I was pregnant, I felt like I couldn't do that. So I stopped doing yoga, which is exactly when I should have been doing yoga. I look back now with a little bit of regret.
Yes.
But then after I had my son, I had a fall. I fell down a flight of stairs holding the baby. Wasn't seriously injured, but I was hurt and really jarred my hips badly, jarred my upper back. The baby was fine, by the way.
Good.
We traveled down the stairs together, sliding down like a toboggan on my back. Right at the bottom, when you've had the wind knocked out of you, I just set him on the floor and just went, and, and so for like many months, I think because I probably bruised either the ligaments or the bones, it took a long time to like be able to lay flat on my back comfortably. And when he was about 4 months old, I returned back to yoga and realized yoga was really healing my body. It was bringing back mobility. It was just really helping me to move in ways that I felt that I wasn't moving very well after that fall. And then I tried to join a gym again after he was born, and I was too busy at work and taking care of an infant, raising a 7-year-old. I was just way too busy. So I started doing yoga again at home. And really my practice of yoga over the last, 14, 13 years has been a solitary practice. And in some ways, I thought, oh my gosh, I don't have an instructor guiding me. Then you're questioning, like, am I doing this right? That's the other thing about yoga. Is there a right or a wrong way? Now I have a whole different view on that. But at the time, that was just what worked for my schedule. So I was doing yoga and I made a commitment to do yoga every single day 1 year. And the benefits are amazing. When you make that kind of a commitment, some days it was only 20 minutes, some days it was an hour and a half. And I would do yoga late at night when everybody was in bed, when the house was quiet and peaceful. I'd light candles. So yoga was serving a lot of purposes, obviously. It was helping me reconnect with myself. It was helping me create downtime away from the, kind of craziness of a busy life. It was helping me heal my body, get in good physical condition. And I think when I was doing so much yoga alone, that became my standard, that you explore the body more and you explore how you are in your body and you explore what works for you. And now as a yoga instructor, so now we kick forward, all these years later, and I decided to go ahead and become an instructor. I take that self-exploration, I take that with me as a teacher, working with people. So now today.
Yeah, that's incredible. I love everything you just said. It's so important. The commitment of yoga, even taking a step back and saying, when you decided, when yoga fell away, you can now look back with retrospect and say, that's when you maybe could have been called to do it more. Right. And
True.
It's a very touchy thing. A lot of people who just like to be in the flow. Well, oftentimes I've faced a lot of confrontation in my yoga career with people. And I say, yoga, when you don't want to do yoga, is the best time to do yoga. And you get so much pushback because people don't want to be told what to do, is really what it comes down to.
True, it's true.
But there is so much beauty in that. The moment, it's just like you can say it simplified. The poses you like the least are oftentimes the ones that will help you build the most strength to help you feel better. Like some people don't like the shoulder workout, the shoulder stretches, the down dog, the dolphin, whatever. But they struggle with chronic upper back pain or shoulder pain. Yeah. And, we have to go into that lion's den to reach that salvation in a way. But the commitment of yoga, I have a question for you based around that. When you were a mom, dealing with the mom life of a full-time job, multiple full-time jobs probably, how did you not fall into the classic, oh, my day was long, the kids are asleep, I'm going to turn on the TV and pour me a glass of wine? What kept you from, and I'm not saying maybe you didn't do that on some days, but what kept you going back to that yoga as that outlet instead of maybe some other non-healthy outlets?
That's a great question, because I did wrestle. There were times I wrestled. I'm like, oh, I just like to sleep on the couch tonight. Everybody's in bed. But I think I did know tangibly that at the end of it, I would feel better. And there were times that I questioned, should I be up at 11:30 at night doing yoga? Shouldn't I be in bed sleeping? But somebody said something to me one time that was really impacting. And she said, 1 hour of yoga is similar to 8 hours of sleep in its restorative ability. And I have really carried that with me. So what compelled me, I think, was that knowledge. Yeah, there were times maybe I was just too tired, but I could guarantee that my family was going to sleep at some point. There were nights the baby maybe was teething and wouldn't let me, and it was going to be a bust. But most nights it worked out really well, and it was my time, and it was my self-care opportunity. And the thing about yoga is if you do it before bed, you're guaranteed you're going to sleep well. So you're guaranteed that the sleep you do get is going to be really healthy sleep, which I think a lot of Americans really struggle with poor sleep.
Yes.
You know? And if you have poor sleep, you're going to have a cascade of other health issues to go with that. And I don't have chronic health conditions. I'm grateful that way. But a lot of people do. And there were other benefits, you know, the pranayama is so detoxifying for the body. There were other benefits, like you get your annual blood work done and all of your numbers are amazing. And you think, no, my diet wasn't amazing. But the one thing I know I did every day was I did yoga. And so at the end of the year, I felt spectacular. And when I started doing distance running, I fell away from yoga because you only have so many hours a day. And that's when I needed to be doing it the most. So it's funny that you say that, because when you do running, you know, all of your muscles shorten. And when your muscles shorten, that puts a lot of pressure on the pelvis, puts a lot of pressure on the position of your sacrum and your hips. And that can lead to a cascade of other imbalances in the body. And I know now if I return to running, I will never fall away from yoga, because I know you need both if you're going to do it. But I also remember the doctor at my job. I'm a rehabilitation counselor. That's my profession. And we had a medical consultant on staff who'd go, "You really need cardio, Kathleen. I know you do all this yoga, but you really need cardio." And I got to tell you, these days, it's the only form of exercise I have. And I can't disagree with him more. I'm getting the cardio. You get it through the breathing, you know?
Yes.
And that takes me on to a new topic, if you don't mind my talking about it.
No, please, segue.
So as an instructor, I know there's a lot of debate about, do we demonstrate throughout the time that we're teaching, or do we get off the mat and walk around the room and talk people through, or do we do both? And one of the things that I've been thinking is, when you are able to demonstrate through your ability to talk through lots of poses, some very challenging poses, without sounding like you're out of breath, you really communicated to your students in your class how powerful the breath is, and that if you can harness it, that you have these amazing benefits. And what I noticed in this last year, because of my strong commitment to doing yoga almost every day, between teaching and a personal practice, I play a wind instrument. I play the flute. That I haven't hardly been practicing because of COVID. I haven't been playing with any groups. Like, wow, why is my sound quality so good? I can tell you why. It's simple. It's mechanical. My breath is so strong. I think my lungs have become so healthy this year. Not that they weren't healthy before, but I think they've become really healthy with the breath. So I can't speak enough about how important breathing is. And breathing is yoga.
Yes, it is. And that's an important distinction to make too. It's also, I had one guest on recently and they talked about the single breath meditations, just finding that stillness in that breath, that one inhale to red light, the one exhale. That's yoga, it's like you said a moment ago, It doesn't have to be an hour. It doesn't have to be anything. There's no parameters. If you can breathe and you can find that central space, you're doing yoga. And that's why we can offer chair yoga and so many other forms of yoga at its simplest form. That's amazing. Yeah, you've got a lot of wisdom, and it's really cool to hear you and how you've made your journey thus far. What would you say your preferred way of teaching is? Like, do you demo? So do you demo, or do you do more of the walk around and just descriptions? What do you feel like? Because a moment ago go ahead.
I do both. I provide very detailed description with demoing. I find that students are still looking to that mat at the front of the room because they want to know what you just described, even if you thought you were really detailed in your description. And everybody learns differently, everybody hears differently. So I still do a lot of demoing, unless I've got people in a holding pose and then I can walk around. One of the things we learn as teachers in yoga is that everybody's presentation is going to be unique to their own body form. So there's been a lot of debate about, what do you do with that? Do you correct people, or do you let them find their own way? And I'm leaning more towards, as long as you're safe in whatever you're in, let you find your own way.
Yes.
There used to be a real movement, a real push for the standard of poses, absolute perfect alignment, absolute right presentation. And I think that keeping people safe is important. But what I do know from my training is that everybody's body might be very different. And so they may actually be following all your cues, but their body isn't going to show it off. You know, our bones are shaped differently. Our joints work differently. We might have shorter muscles that we're born with and longer muscles over here. You know, everything is kind of different. So I've learned not to become, you know, weird about form. If I really think somebody is in a form that I don't think is healthy, or that's not really realizing their potential, I will ask if they would like a correction. But as a teacher, I don't want people to ever feel embarrassed on the mat. I don't want people to feel, you know, I want them to feel guided. I want them to feel led. I want them to feel supported. But I want them to feel like they're okay in their own body, in their own space. And if they want my help, I'm going to offer it. So I do both. I do some walking around, but a lot of demonstrating and very high level of cueing. And my part of that is my background. I used to be a counselor for blind and low vision. And so I always wanted to practice where people can close their eyes and follow it. You know, so
that is so beautiful. That's so beautiful.
I don't know about you, but I do a lot of yoga with my eyes closed.
I do too. And I feel like maybe we're part of like the smaller percentile that does that. I don't know. In teaching, it seems like a lot of our students oftentimes will have their eyes open, but even when I'm teaching, I just kind of sink into that body and just, you know, always.
I know. And I have to be careful not to do that, because if I do that, I might be missing out. You
Yes.
know, like if I'm in a class and I'm a student, I don't care. But if I'm the teacher, I've got to make sure that they don't think I'm just lost in my own space.
Yeah, it's important. It is important. It's challenging. What was your, do you have a yoga style that you prefer? I know you said that you, the local community earlier, you mentioned prefers more like slow style, but what do you prefer? What's your personal preference in practice?
So I do enjoy a good Ashtanga type flow. So I am kind of drawn to long holds, strength poses. I know Kundalini is a wonderful style of yoga. It doesn't resonate as much with me. I'm not sure why. Maybe I feel frenetic when I'm doing it, and maybe I need to do it more to teach me to not have that feeling. But, you know, a nice vinyasa flow, hatha style yoga. But the thing about hatha is it's really much broader than we think of it as. We tend to think of hatha as, oh, it's slow, connected to the breath, but really it can be fast or slow. Or it can be faster or slow. And I teach power yoga classes, you know, so that like bumps everything up. And for power yoga, I really think in terms of the idea of building heat, building strength, whereas a vinyasa flow can have elements of that, but there's a lot of periods in between that you're focusing more on the flow and less on the building of the heat and the strength. So those are really probably my two most favorite ways to do yoga. But I have become a huge lover of balancing that out with what you just said, with chair, with gentle yoga. And I teach all four of those forms, and have developed my own way of delivering those classes. And I'll decide at the beginning of the week what my theme is going to be or what my inspiration will be. And I will carry that through all four types of classes that I do. And so if you were my student, you would find elements from each of those flows in each of those types of classes. There's like this thread that continues through them. But I've discovered that I teach chair yoga for my colleagues. And at one time in my life, I thought, oh, chair yoga is just like, you know, for people that can't stand. That's not
Yes.
even true.
No.
My practice advanced when I started doing chair yoga because you use this chair as a magnificent prop to help you really work on alignment and different aspects of your yoga. And when I started doing the gentle flow, same thing, designing a flow where people don't have to get up and down so much. And really using that at a slower pace, really focusing on the breath, really focus on the opening of the hips and the opening of the heart center and the chest. Again, I think it advanced my practice of yoga. It made it better. And it taught me as a person, like we keep talking about, that yoga is so many things. And without the breath, it's nothing. It's just movement.
It's just movement.
So what I'm drawn to is those two other forms in terms of just the physicality, because I'm an active person. But I really do enjoy my days that I slow it down to,
Yeah, of course. Each day is, and I knew going into that question, I'm like, oh, it's a loaded question for sure. But because it's a day by day thing. Some evenings, I wake up and I love some power yoga sometimes, some handstand inversion workshops. Like I want to learn that stuff, but then other times I'm just like, no, I'm not feeling that. And so we slow down. So I like what you said about the theme teaching. I've never really heard about that being woven into, I'm sure many teachers maybe do it subconsciously. Maybe even they hold the theme for quarters of a year or 6 months or a year at a time without recognizing it. But the fact that you intentionally set aside themes to work into each of your styles of classes weekly, I think that's pretty magical. So do you have an example for us? Maybe a theme you used last week or this week, or a successful theme?
So I do mudras as my theme. Now in the studio, I may not demonstrate the mudra, or I might. It depends on my students and what they like. But this week's mudra is the Garuda mudra, the eagle, the gesture of the eagle. And so I have this book of mudra cards, and this is what is influencing me now. Next year, it's probably going to be something else.
Of course.
But what I consider with that mudra is what parts of the body are activated as a result. What are the beneficial properties of that mudra? And that talks to me about chakras. So, the 7 main chakras from the root all the way to the crown. How the mudra is described in terms of what you use it for. If it's for balancing, if it's for, improving communication, if it's for improving respiration, that tells me what part of the body, which chakra in the body is likely activated by that, or which chakras. Sometimes it's more than one. And so I will design a flow, not just around those beneficial properties, what poses help those things, but I might even really just design a flow around those chakras, those specific chakras. And one of the things I have found in my teaching, like we kind of all build our classes with a beginning, middle, and an end, right? We have a part of the beginning is getting into the breath, coming to the mat, settling in, bringing our mind, our heart, our body to the mat, and getting into that moment. So that's one aspect. And then we start to do warm-up. Then we have a middle part, that's our movement part. And then we have our floor portion. And then we have a final resting with meditation built in. And I like my students to leave with a very complete experience. So I like to build a visual meditation in at the end of every practice. And at the beginning of every practice, I hint at what that visual meditation might be like by introducing what our theme is for the week. And I might actually introduce the actual mudra, or I might just talk about the properties of it. So it depends. This week, I'm definitely relying on Garuda mudra as we head into the full moon. I'm thinking of freedom, of the fullness of the breath, using this mudra to lift up the heart center as you draw down those shoulders and draw your face up to that full moon, feeling that expressiveness of your heart almost bursting with that feeling of freedom that you're creating, using the eagle as symbolic of our freedom, using that as an opportunity to talk about ways that we might inhibit ourselves from experiencing freedom, self-limiting thoughts, holding on to things that don't serve us. It goes and goes and goes from there. So I kind of find that when I do that, and this week I'm going to have moon salutations built into my practices. I find a way to do that a little bit with chair yoga, because you can do goddess on chair and you can do some things on chair to
Wow,
build that in,
that sounds
you
exciting.
know. So the moon salutations will be built in. Tonight I'm doing my power class and there will be moon salutations. I'll probably use the moon salutation more as part of warming up the body and then go into some traditional power poses as part of it. But it's kind of tricky sometimes to weave those in on something that's gentle like a moon salutation sequence. But how do we build them in? Well, you know, something like camel opens up the heart and kind of continues on with that theme of raising up the heart, finding our freedom, finding our lift, and using that symbol of the eagle as part of that theme. So that's kind of how I do it, you know. And tonight, well, today's Tuesday, sorry, tomorrow night, Stephen Rubio and I are doing sound healing around the theme of the full moon. So I'll be delivering a vinyasa flow, and he'll be delivering live music and live sound healing outdoors. It's our first time taking it outdoors. We've been doing it on Instagram for several months now. So this forces me to think in a way like, okay, there's the way my students are going to want it in the studio for a power routine. There's the way my students in the studio are going to want it for their gentle yoga. But now these people that are coming to this outdoor event are going to want a bigger experience potentially. So how do I answer to that? How do I really emphasize, you know, the sound healing along with the meditation that I plan to deliver? So I do plan out my classes. I do take time at the beginning of the week. I have my pages printed out here. And
I
so,
love it. So organized.
well, that's kind of how I operate. Some people keep a little journal. A lot of this is memorized when I go to the mat, but I carry it with me anyway. Mm-hmm. And I'm not insistent that if I deviate from this, it's tragic. I just want to make sure that my students have a good experience, a complete experience. I'm comfortable as an instructor just picking a theme and going with it and being on the fly as well. But I want to make sure, at least right now that I'm new to a studio, that the experience they have is what they expected and that it's complete. So that's how I do it.
I love it. That's awesome. There is something to be said about practicing in person. I think that automatically, innately adds to the overarching experience tremendously.
I totally agree with you.
Yeah, I think that's something that we all came into great realization of over this last year when we lost that ability to practice with one another. But I think that you're going to have such a tremendous success with your upcoming outdoor sound healing and yoga flow, because one, it's going to be outdoors, and two, there's going to be a good amount of people there. So I know you're going to absolutely conquer it, and they're going to leave with a full heart, because you can't take as much intention as you do in formulating stuff and then not be received. It's just not how it works. So that's awesome.
That's always the hope. Yes.
Yes.
And
yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, we've all had, I'm sure you've studied yoga under a variety of people over the years. And what you're describing, that element of leaving with the full heart, that's what, for me, has made instructors that I return to versus the ones I didn't. You know? So that's, again, a reminder to us that yoga is about so much more than exercise.
It is. It is.
You know, and that is what I hope will keep people coming back, that they feel so good when they leave. Not because they sweat real hard, but because they really feel, you know. And this year, I never taught meditation specifically. I'm actually going through a meditation teacher training right now. But I started just teaching it because somebody asked. And one of the things I want to say about yoga is that yoga has taught me to be in the moment. Yoga has taught me to follow the breadcrumb line that's set out for me. If somebody plants something, we all have a choice to pick it up or to walk away from it. And yoga has taught me, pick it up, go with it, see what happens. I'm grateful I don't have to live off of my yoga salary, because if I might not be willing to be so free to do this if I was worried about the money side of it. But I have found myself just moving in directions that people call me to. Sure, I'll try that out. and do that. And so I started on Facebook and Instagram Live. I started doing Monday night meditation. And I find I'll get messages from people, even if they weren't on live, they'll go back and they'll do it. And it runs about an hour. Sometimes I have music in it, sometimes I don't. I introduce a mudra. We talk about that. We do some gentle flow as part of it. I do some guided meditation. We do breath work, lots of different types of breath work. And it runs, 45 minutes to an hour. I try to be consistent every single Monday night to do it. And I will get private messages from people. Because you're doing that, I'm trying yoga now, And so I have changed, I think, in my willingness to just let it come out of me. You may have heard that a lot of instructors, a lot of people who practice yoga for a long time and now they become instructors, we kind of struggle with what we might call imposter syndrome. Like, am I qualified to bring this to people?
Absolutely.
And I am finally owning that maybe I am, maybe I am qualified to share this with people.
I think you are.
But it was, and Stephen has watched me, Stephen Rubio. I don't know if you know Stephen, but Stephen has been a student of mine, and then we went to yoga teacher training together, and now we collaborate together. And he has seen an evolution, and he says it's getting better all the time. And what he's really talking about is the way it flows, and I think that for yoga, we have to be willing as instructors to allow the energy to flow through us and out of us. And energy is real. And I'm a total type A person. I'm a very, I don't know what you know about personality types, from the personality scales. I am one of those highly organized, got to have my ducks in a row, all of my T's crossed.
Yes.
I'm very, and yet with yoga, I have allowed myself to be more free flowing. And I think that makes us more confident when we allow ourselves to move out of just the mechanics of everything and allow the energy to come in and come back out of us and say, you know what? It doesn't matter if it's perfect, because people pick up intention. They really do.
Exactly.
And you can, just like when you read to babies, you could read a scientific journal to a baby and they care about your voice. Well, I think we're all like that. There's this part inside of us that just wants to hear that soothing voice, that calming, somebody to model that calmness. And so I have a lot of friends who started doing meditation because of that. Well, if I just listen to your voice, I could probably talk about anything, but I do find at the end of it, even I'm amazed. I'll be like, how did we get here? I'll find myself at the end of a flow, at the end of a meditation that has wrapped it all up, and wonder, how did I get to that point?
That's so beautiful.
So I feel like it carries me too. And so having returned to a studio, I feel like, okay, I want to deliver to the students exactly what they want, so I do this organization, but I want to allow that piece of me to come through so that people are riding that wave with me to this, wherever it leads us.
Yes, that openness, that is a channeling that happens. And as a teacher or a guide, you can feel it when it kind of seeps into you. Maybe it's right when you first close your eyes at the beginning and you bring people into that breath. I particularly feel it. It's more like it's like instant, a flood of sensation, slight levitation sensation. I don't know how to describe it, but I think in your own way. It's powerful to be able to, keep your channel open and to practice that balance. One, being able to call things for what it is. That's the first step, right? Recognizing, internally looking into yourself and saying, okay, what type of personality am I? What type of personality do I avoid? How can I incorporate what I avoid? And then how can I then recognize how my life shifts? And you're doing that, right? You're incorporating that free flow yoga style, and it is allowing you to not have blinders on. A lot of people, they go through life with certainty, and it actually limits them, I think, despite their being self-convinced of the opposite. It's important to have that balance and to practice in that balance. And yoga is also that practice of balance, as we talked about, whether it's, okay, today I'm going to do power yoga, then tomorrow or tonight I'm going to do a yin. It is balance, yin and yang. It's how we get through it.
It's
I have a
true.
question for you. I wanted to ask you, what were some of the biggest challenges you've faced so far with teaching, and how have you overcome them?
Uh, it's very difficult as an instructor to not make too much of what you think you're reading in the students' faces. Because some people are very serious in their practice and they're not going to give hint that they're enjoying it. You know,
That's
and you have to
huge.
not, it is huge. And you have to, another instructor, Nicole and I were just talking about this. Like, you know, did people look like they were enjoying it? And we really have to reassure ourselves that they're there. And they're going to, take from that experience what they will, and we have to give the freedom for it to be what it's going to be. They may come back, they may not come back. We have to check our ego around these things, because there is that involvement. Like, oh, you know, you want to please everybody,
Especially when you
and
take the intention that you take. I mean, that's like, I mean,
mm-hmm.
that's next level. So I can
Yeah.
understand.
So, but we have to give it up to, you know, to the universe and say, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. A wise friend of mine, you know her, Amina Teach Out, said, for every student that wants to practice yoga, there is a teacher. And I think her point is that we are enough. You're enough, I'm enough. What we bring is enough. And we have to have that confidence in that. So for me as a teacher, I think that's been, and I'm a counselor by profession. So obviously connectionalism is so important to me, you know? And so if I feel like I'm not connecting with somebody, it might shake my confidence, but I have to move past that. And I'm starting to allow myself in my studio classes to move into dialoguing with students while we're in flow, because I think that's part of how I keep people engaged or keep them distracted from something. If you're on a long hold and your monkey mind might be kind of making you panic a little bit about it, I don't talk about the pose. I talk about all kinds of other weird things, you know, something that is appropriate for that moment in time, but distracts people from it. And then at the end, you find you have folded more deeply into that pose. And how did you arrive there? Because you allowed your body to relax. So I'm starting to do more of that relating, you know, but I'm still new at this. I'm only 4 weeks in to studio teaching because we're just now opening up, you know. So that to me is the biggest challenge. I have to say I'm really enjoying being in a studio space. I know there was a lot of conversation during COVID about models of delivering yoga and how the studio model on a business level doesn't work. And I respect that. I totally get it. Yoga teachers aren't really paid enough for what they do to some degree. And so I don't live off of my yoga. So my involvement in that conversation is kind of lower, you know, because I know that I don't have to live on my yoga salary, and I'm grateful that I can play around with this and see where it's going to take me one day. But there's been a lot of talk about that. Does the studio model work? You know, but in reality, just like you've talked about how in-person yoga is so valuable, the students want that same experience. They don't all want one-on-one lessons. They want to be in a group setting. There is group energy. There's something to be said about group energy. And there's something to be said about having a beautiful space to practice in that's already designed and set up for you. You know, there are huge challenges to teaching outside, you know, huge challenges to making that work. And teaching from my home, you know, on a camera, I feel like I've mastered it, but it can be a lonely experience, you know, quite a lonely experience. So for me right now, I'm just really enjoying that experience of being in a beautiful place that was designed beautifully, put together beautifully, and sharing that experience with other yoga instructors in that studio, having that opportunity to talk to one another, bounce off one another. We take classes from each other and learn from each other. So for right now, I'm getting way more positives than negatives from it. But I'd say the biggest challenge that I experience as an instructor now in a studio is wanting to make sure that I connect with my students and being okay with what their experience is separate from that and not making too much of it. So So, because it's easy to do that. It's easy to make too
Yes.
much of it.
And it's very noble to be able to recognize that too. You know, it comes from
Yeah.
those reflections and having the teachers around you, no doubt, the community that you're growing. So useful. And again, we
Yeah.
talked a little bit about earlier before the interview, something that I definitely admire. And I don't know if anticipate's the right word, but I do look forward to having that experience one day. But for now, I get to bring the spotlight of the fact that those things exist to the people and to the world that may not know that they exist
Yeah.
yet. So that's where I
Yeah.
find solace. That's beautiful, though. What tips do you have for anyone who's interested in getting into teaching yoga? They've tried it out for a little bit and they love yoga. They want to now go to a teacher training. What do you recommend?
So when I was picking a training, I asked a lot of people where they did their training, and I I tend to be one of those people that's totally comfortable with a lot of the training being a self-taught aspect. My master's program was like that. That was my approach to my yoga teacher training. So you got to know what kind of student you are, and maybe you want to take into consideration what delivery method of training you want given to you as a person preparing to be a teacher. So I think it's a good idea to interview or communicate in advance with the people that are leading teaching trainings to ask them, what's your style of teaching? What's the curriculum like? How structured is it? You might be one of those people that really loves a lot of structure. You might be one of those people that's totally okay learning it all on your own, doing a lot of self-study. My program had a portfolio at the end, and it was not as well organized as some people would want. I found my way through it, and I probably put more than 200 hours into that training. That's the other thing. 200 hours of training is nothing. You are probably going to put in 400 hours between your self-study and the time that you spend actually in training. So 200 training is just your beginning. That's the other thing that a good friend of mine up in Canada, her name is Harisha. She's a yoga instructor from India. She said, if you decide to become a yoga teacher, you have to decide to become a lifelong student.
Ooh, that's good.
So keeping that in mind, that 200 hours is the seed. It's just the beginning. You know, and if you are listening to your heart, it'll start to guide you in all the ways you think you want to go. And so for now, I'm doing meditation teacher training. The recommendation by Yoga Move, who is the organization delivering it, is that you actually take a year to do it. He's saying, slow it down, form your own meditation practice. The other thing about teaching is you can only bring what you have inside of you. So you've got to create that thing inside of you to bring it to other people. So being dedicated to your own practice is critical if you're going to teach. You can not only have your time that you're with students be the time that you do your own practice. You know, you need to be creating your own practice and bringing that to the mat. So for people that want to be a teacher, I say you can't do it for the money because it can take a long time. You know, and what I have noticed is a lot of people will teach for a while and then they'll stop teaching and say, I don't want to go back to teaching. I did that part of my life. So while it may seem like a saturated profession, I don't know if it is. There's a lot of movement in the profession. Some people teach for a lifetime. Some people teach for a few years. Some people take a teacher training to enhance their own way of doing yoga. People have all different motivations. So understand what you want, knowing yourself. It all comes from knowing yourself. And then knowing how you like to learn will guide you in finding a program. Some people are totally comfortable with an online training, and that's really taken off since COVID. You know, I am certified with Yoga Alliance, and Yoga Alliance, as you know, had a rule forever that your training had to be an in-person training to become Yoga Alliance certified. They've bent on that since the pandemic. I don't know what they'll do post-pandemic on that. And I loved my teachers for my in-person training. I loved my time. I loved collaborating with my other, you know, cohort members. But I spent as much time alone learning as what they gave to me, you know. So it all depends on where you're at. Some people are really good at being self-taught and some people aren't. And it's just, you just got to know yourself and be okay with it. And then once you decide you want to be a yoga teacher, just own that, man. I say to people, just start teaching. I don't care if you teach online to your computer. I don't care if you offer free classes in the park. I don't care if you get on Instagram like I did and just start doing something. Start connecting. Start getting it out there. Start being out there. Don't worry about perfection. Focus on your core values and let the rest of the things fall in place around it, because they will. They will.
Yes,
so
they will. It's almost in a way, reflecting back on what you said about living authentically and how that can be incorporated into the practice as well. To me, I feel like if you go into a class with the intention of being authentic and the intention of giving your students an experience that they feel that they can walk away from knowing that they were value is added to their life, right? We can simplify. And if you are teaching like that, then you don't have really any competition at all, because what you recognize is that there's only so many types of personalities. There's only so many types of people that exist in the world. We all have our experiences that cause branching off of those personality traits, styles, and characteristics. But realistically, if you can come into yourself, cultivate that practice within yourself, that space, and then come from that space to the people in an authentic, intentional way, the people who are doing it for the money, not that there's anything wrong with that, but the people who are, there's differences, and it's an energetic, sensitive feeling thing. And when you really just do it from the heart, I find that those are the yoga teachers that are beyond successful. And it's just like, because what you have to ask, what do you really gauge success on? And I think that it is important not to gauge, at least in the sense of yoga, the success should maybe not base it on wealth and what you're bringing in monetarily, because that, although it is a very important form of energetic exchange into modern society, it's not what, in my opinion, it's not what determines the level of your ability to reach people through yoga. Because like you said, it could take years before you actually generate enough income to be considered a living wage with yoga.
True.
So it's like, it's just important, I think, to note that if anyone's new and getting into yoga, maybe consider having something to supplement you, so you have the freedom like you do, to play with that. So you're not like death gripping yoga with these unkind expectations that is only going to lead to disappointment and more suffering. And then you blame it on yoga, but it's not yoga. It's just, the mind and all that we live with every day.
No, I think you're absolutely right about that. And most yoga teachers have a second profession or more,
True.
And one thing that I keep as a takeaway from one of my instructors, Annalisa Burns up at Big Bear Yoga. I was explaining to her one day, I said, I'm teaching all these classes to Zoom. I edit these videos, I put them on YouTube. I'm just trusting that they will have a purpose. And she said, absolutely. What you're doing now can have a purpose later on. It can be the basis for a book you write. It can be the basis for something that you develop, whatever. Trusting that nothing that you do is wasted. You're not wasting your time just because you didn't get back in that moment what you hoped would come from it. Because you're gaining something in that moment anyway. But later on, it still may come into great play. And you know what? If I have a friend that's struggling, I really need to get back into some movement, I have a great chair class for you. I'm going to send you a link. I love that I can gift these things out. They're complete classes. They run an hour long, hour and 15 minutes long, sometimes less, sometimes more. But I love that I can just go into my video library and I'll pluck out a video and send it off to a friend as, try this out, see if this helps you, Maybe they do it, maybe they don't. I know that a friend of mine just recently passed on links I gave to her to somebody else that's struggling. And she sent me a private message and said, I have a friend who's going through hard times. I sent her your website. I told her to look you up on Instagram. I send her some of your videos, you know?
Beautiful.
So I'm still getting something.
Yes. And
Is it more
that's,
business? I don't care, you know?
yes. And that's the residual that's going to continue. It's
Yeah.
huge. And I definitely feel you on that. I mean, this whole channel is based around the
Hmm.
ability to do just that. So it's
Yeah. Yeah.
gorgeous. It's,
Can we talk a little bit about connectionalism within the yoga community?
of course.
So, as you may be, and I know I am, I have used this year to be connecting with people all over the country and all over the world around the idea of yoga. You know, we're lucky. We're in a time where you can find any Facebook group you're looking for around any theme that you're looking for. But what's so neat about it is it's not just people I'm chatting with online. Some of us have struck up personal friendships. We private message each other. We've talked on the phone. We've done Instagram lives together. One time I accidentally called one of them and she picked up because, you know, my phone was in my pocket and it dialed her and she picked up. I highly recommend that we don't ever do yoga within a vacuum. We have to create a community. And one of the things that I really wanted badly for our local area was that yoga not be cutthroat, competitive, everything that's against what I believe yoga is. And there is that. You know, there is that. We know it.
There absolutely is.
So not only do I make sure that I'm connected with, you know, and this meditation training that I'm doing every Monday morning on Zoom, I gather with my friend from Canada and a local instructor, and we're inviting more people in if they want to be part of that experience to just join in on our Zoom calls where we talk about our meditative practices and we talk about what we got from the materials that we went through that week. You know, so creating authentic connections. Like one day if I travel, I know these are people I'm going to go see, you know, and that makes it a more rich experience for you. But also within our local community, you know, we started the Rim Yoga and Meditation group. You're a member of that group.
Yes.
And I started off with like 2 people. It was just me and Amina to start, and Steven, maybe 3, you know, and it has exploded lately, you know, because whenever somebody talks about wanting to do yoga, I'll say, you know what, we have this meditation group, you know, and I just put the link up. But now there's like 170 members on it. And it's a mixture of instructors, students, people that do sound healing, people that are in other healing arts like Reiki, you know, people that do massage therapy. It's like we're creating this thing. And my wish is that we're going to create like this movement of connectionalism through yoga, even if it's just online. But what happens is people start meeting each other in person, you know, and people that I've met in person now are going to be coming to the sound healing tomorrow night. And so, you know, my wish was that, you know, people would see a bunch of people that are doing the delivery of this service, of this teaching, that we're cool with each other, that we're not fighting for you as a student, that whatever you want, there's somebody out there and we're cool with it. We're all good with it, that we're not tripping over ourselves trying to reach for that dollar, gain our own following. I really wanted it to all be about inclusiveness, and that eventually it reaches that person that's been afraid to try yoga because they said I'm not flexible enough, I'm not strong enough, I don't have enough core strength, or whatever their reasons are. I don't know how to settle down, I don't know how to sit still to meditate. Whatever menagerie of reasons people have, that maybe we reach that one person that now feels this energy, sees it, and wants to be part of it. So, you know, and there is definitely movement building on this mountain, I can tell you. I think there is.
Yes, it is. It's happening. It's happening
Mm-hmm.
all over. It's really happening there. And it's gorgeous to see
Mm-hmm.
people coming together, and your success that you've had with, you know, Lake Arrowhead and, you know, soon to be the sound healing. I just know people are looking forward to this, and it's great to be able to look at a big picture advantage and just kind of watch how the whole world is working to stimulate yoga in the lives of so many people who have for so long been so against it. So thank you for being part of that movement. It's so needed right now, and which is why it's being met with such success.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you. The pandemic had its pains, but I think that it was a reset option for us, opportunity for us.
Big time. And an opportunity to go forward with a new normal, right? Not maybe returning to the same old, because that my personal opinion is resets to that magnitude don't come when everything is truly okay and that normal. I feel like the
Oh,
normal we
you're
were
right.
dealing with needed something to
Mm-hmm.
shake it up, needed a movement that
Mm-hmm.
so many movements have been born through this last year. So many uncalculatable movements have been birthed into this existence now. But we can hold on to this yoga wave and recognize that this is helping to heal people, and we
Mm-hmm.
can help be a part of sending them links because it does so much. Its purpose, in my opinion, its purpose.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So in closing, I like to ask always, what are some maybe books, whether it's yoga philosophy or fiction or nonfiction or whatever, if it's a documentary or a certain teacher, what are some of the things that have helped to shape you and get you to the depth of wisdom and knowledge that you have on your practice?
So recently I got, um, it's a yoga astrology book. It's a really wonderful book. I can send you a copy. I'll send you a picture of it later because I don't want to get up and walk into the room to get it and leave the camera. But it's really neat because it goes through the 4 seasons and the zodiac signs with each of those seasons. And then for each week, it has a beautiful 1 to 3 page like description of something around that season and that zodiac sign, you know, attributes of that personality that might come with that or whatever. It has a pose at the end, and it has a Dharma talk, like a closing thought to leave you with. And as a person, I love seeing things like this because I can weave that into my practice. And each one is like a little nugget of wisdom that you can carry with you for the week. So, I mean, we all have lots of yoga books. We all amass a library because we get curious and we pick something up. But it's those kinds of things that really grab me. Those ones that have like these little bites that I can carry with me, read it for the week, and then use it. I can use that to build a whole practice around just that pose, you know? So that has been kind of my most recent book. And then of course, I'm a big lover of getting little boxes of cards. So I have the Mudra cards, but they have other sets that you can buy that can also like just provide you with some inspiration, because one of the things we struggle with in yoga is creativity sometimes, not following into the same old, same old. Some people really love that, and some people want to have, you know, more innovation built in. And so those really help me. To be honest with you though, much of my challenging of my thinking or broadening of my thinking is really coming from watching public conversations. You know, a lot of people that are on Instagram, like Susan Barkataki, who's really talking about the westernization of yoga and carrying over of like colonial roots of us usurping it, taking it and bringing it into our culture while removing any semblance of what it used to be, of what the culture was that influenced and created yoga. So watching a lot of those conversations has really moved me into an area of thinking about how we here in the West respect the practice of yoga and how we demonstrate that, you know. So I spend a lot of time reading what people have to say, both in Facebook groups and Instagram personalities. So that helps me a lot. And if I think about instructors that I have followed over the years that really kind of catapulted me, one of them is I'm still a member of yogatoday.com, which is, you know, initially started off as 3 women that had their own studios in Wyoming. And then from there, they created this website. They were like one of the first to create this online learning platform that was like true classes online, not scripted, like you see in yoga videos. That's why I hated doing yoga videos, because they were always scripted and I hated that. But it felt like being in a real class with real people. And those 3 women and the way that they delivered yoga really influenced how I deliver yoga today. And now they've broadened it. The website's huge. You know, for like $12 a month, you can like have access to hundreds of yoga videos that are delivered like personal classes. And now that's so popular, but it was innovative when they did it. And then for many years, I followed Nathan Johnson, who I don't think is teaching yoga anymore. I can't find him anywhere on the internet. And I've actually talked with him before. In his classes, I used to think, oh my gosh, they're just so fun. They're just so creative, these neat transitions and flows, and they take you out of your norm and out of your comfort zone. But one of the things that he said that I still carry with me today is, if you have dropped down into child's pose because you need to do that in the middle of a flow, you are being like a master yogi. That's yoga.
Yeah.
Again, the breath. He's talking about the breath, the connecting to your own body, the listening to what you need. That's the yoga.
Yes.
And we need to make sure that people know that so that they feel comfortable within their practice. So those are like the things that have influenced me the most. And, it's always evolving and changing. There's always new stuff.
Of course. And I love that you take time to hear what the people have to say. That is huge in being able to reach the people. So yeah, keep doing you. I know you will without any worry. I'm excited to continue to follow you and see what comes from your beautiful journey and your path in this yoga world. And thank you again for making time and coming on here to share some of your insights and wisdom for the people who are listening.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate you so much.
Hey everybody, really hope you enjoyed that talk. It was beautiful to have that experience with that shared guest. We have a lot of very useful information in the description section below, so be sure to check it out. I've also linked any and all videos with that individual in the description below, so check those out as well. It's an honor to bring this footage to you, and I hope you can come back and continue to deepen your practice. Namaste.